Echoes in the mineshaft. The afternoon sun, usually a welcome companion, felt almost mocking as Kale drove his pickaxe into the stubborn earth. Dust plumed around him, coating his weathered leather tunic. He was deep in the Overworld's northern reaches, far from the familiar clatter of his village, seeking a new vein of diamonds. Days had blurred into a monotonous rhythm of mining, crafting, and fending off the occasional Overworld menace. Today, however, promised something different. He struck something hollow, not the usual dense rock or hard granite. A strange, resonant thrum vibrated up his arm, echoing deep within the earth. With a few more precise swings, a cavity opened, revealing not a cavern or a fresh ore deposit, but a dark, gaping maw. It was the entrance to an abandoned mineshaft, but unlike any he had encountered before. This one wasn't a natural cave system with scattered wooden supports. It was deliberately constructed, almost camouflaged by years of overgrown vines and moss, and a natural chill seemed to seep from its depths, even under the warm sun. Kale hesitated, his hand resting on the smooth, polished handle of his diamond pickaxe. Every instinct born of countless underground expeditions screamed caution, yet an insatiable curiosity, a miner's innate drive to uncover the unknown, pulled him forward. He lit a torch, its flames spitting a defiant warmth against the cold, and stepped into the darkness. The air grew heavy immediately, thick with the scent of damp earth and ancient wood. The familiar creak of decaying timber and the scuttling of unseen cave spiders were present, but overlaid with something else. Faint, almost imperceptible at first, Kyle began to hear them. Whispers, carried on an unseen breeze, seemed to brush past his ears. A distant rhythmic clang, like pickaxes striking stone, echoed from far below. He paused, holding his breath, listening. It wasn't the natural groaning of the earth. These were sounds of life, distorted by time and distance, the echoes. He pressed onward, his boots crunching on loose gravel and brittle railway ties. The mineshaft descended steeply, twisting and turning, becoming ever more elaborate. Side passages, not merely rough-hewn, branched off into small, meticulously crafted chambers. Here, Kale found a dusty workbench, its surface scarred by long-forgotten tools. In another, a chest, its lid ajar, contained nothing but a handful of petrified, moldy bread. This was no ordinary mine. Someone had lived here, deep beneath the surface, for a significant time. The echoes intensified, weaving a tapestry of sound. He clearly distinguished the low, contented of a villager, followed by a faint, high-pitched giggle that sent a shiver down his spine. It sounded like a child. This was unsettling. Villagers did not dwell in abandoned mineshafts. They lived in bustling villages under the open sky. As he ventured deeper, the mine's character changed again. The supports became stronger, crafted from dark oak rather than spruce, and the pathways widened into grander corridors. He noticed strange block patterns, sections of walls replaced by smooth, almost obsidian-like stone that glowed with a faint internal luminescence. This wasn't glowstone, nor was it any block Kale recognized from his extensive studies of the Overworld. The air, though still cool, now carried a strange, metallic tang, almost like ozone. A new sound joined the symphony of echoes, a faint, mournful wail, drawn out and filled with an unbearable sorrow. It seemed to emanate from the very bedrock. Kyle clutched his pickaxe tighter, his heart pounding a nervous rhythm against his ribs. He was no longer merely exploring. He was following a trail of spectral breadcrumbs, drawn into a mystery he knew was far beyond simple ore discovery. He found more clues, each one raising more questions. A small, meticulously carved wooden golem lay half buried in a pile of rubble, its face frozen in a look of abject terror. Further on, a diamond pickaxe lay embedded in a vein of deep slate, as if its owner had simply vanished mid-swing. The air thickened with unseen presence, and the temperature dropped sharply, making his breath miss. He glanced over his shoulder, half expecting to see a shadowy figure, but found only the inky blackness beyond his torchlight. Suddenly, a loud, guttural groan echoed directly ahead, followed by a sharp, pained cry. This was no distant memory. It felt immediate, raw. Kale quickened his pace, rounding a bend that opened into a vast, naturally generated cavern. But this cavern was unlike any other he'd seen. In the center, bathed in the faint glow of the strange obsidian-like blocks embedded in the cavern walls, stood a colossal structure. It resembled a shattered villager statue, but instead of the usual benevolent features, its stone face was contorted in agony, its limbs twisted into unnatural angles. Dark veins, like cracks of corrupted energy, snaked across its surface, occasionally pulsing with an eerie, sickly green light. The mournful wail, now deafening, seemed to pour from the statue's gaping mouth, filling the entire chamber with sorrow. As Kyle approached, the echoes intensified to an almost unbearable cacophony. He heard the joyous chatter of villagers, the clang of tools, the laughter of children, all overlaid with a growing sense of panic, of desperate shouts, and then a horrifying, earth-shattering boom. The sounds ripped through him, making him reel as if struck. It was a replay, a final, catastrophic moment frozen in time and energy. Just as the cacophony reached its peak, a ripple of purplish-black particles coalesced in the shadows behind the statue. An Enderman materialized, its tall, gaunt form utterly still. Its violet eyes, usually so fixated on Kale's gaze, were fixed instead on the corrupted statue, reflecting the sickly green glow. It did not seem hostile, but rather watchful. It lifted a long, slender arm, pointing a single, elongated finger, not at Kale, but at the statue, and then slowly, deliberately, towards a shimmering, almost invisible crack in the air, just above the statue's head. The Enderman's action was subtle, yet profound. It was not a monster in this moment, but an observer, perhaps even a guide. The whispers Kale had heard, the sounds of digging, the laughter, the terror. They weren't mere echoes in the traditional sense. They were residual energy, frozen moments, perhaps even fragments of consciousness, leaking from that subtle tear in reality. The mournful wail from the statue subsided, replaced by a low, continuous hum, like a distant dying star. The Enderman, as silently as it had arrived, dissipated back into particles, leaving Kyle alone in the vast, echoing chamber. He understood, or at least, he began to piece together a grim understanding. These villagers hadn't just abandoned their mine. They had dug too deep, tampered with something they shouldn't have. Perhaps they sought refuge from the surface, burrowing ever deeper, only to breach a fragile barrier between dimensions. That shimmering crack, the source of the echoes, was a wound in the fabric of the world, and the statue was not merely a cursed relic, but a monument to their final, desperate struggle. It was a focal point for the raw, lingering trauma of their end. The Enderman, a creature of warped dimensions, was drawn to such anomalies, perhaps even feeding on their residual energy. It was a tragic, almost poetic conclusion to an entire community. Kale did not linger. The silence that followed the fading echoes was more profound than any noise, a heavy blanket woven from sorrow and forgotten screams. He turned, his heart a leaden weight in his chest, and began the long ascent. He didn't mind a single block on his way out, stepping carefully over the ancient rail tracks, past the dusty workbenches and the petrified bread. When he finally emerged from the overgrown entrance, the sun had begun to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and violet. The familiar world felt subtly different, imbued with a new, somber depth. He looked back at the hidden entrance, now just a shadowed crevice in the earth. He pulled a single block of polished deep slate from his inventory, a grave marker for a community long lost. He gently placed it at the base of the vines, a silent tribute. The echoes were gone from the mineshaft, but they reverberated in Kale's mind. He had not found diamonds or gold, but something far more precious and far more chilling. A forgotten story, etched into the very stones of the earth, a testament to what happens when ambition or desperation lead one to pierce the veil of the unknown. He knew he would never look at a simple mineshaft the same way again. The overworld held secrets deeper than any ore vein, and some were best left undisturbed.